Nararapat na masagot ang katanungang ito. Anong nangyari sa pera ng taong bayan? Masasagot lamang ito ng dalawang tao. Una, ang head of agency, which in the case of both the OVP and the DepEd is the Vice President. At ikalawa, ang Special Disbursement Officer, SDO, na sila Miss Gina Acosta para sa OVP at Mr. Edward Fajarda para sa DepEd. Ngunit ni isa sa mga ito ay hindi nagpapakita sa atin. Dito po makikita po natin yung dalawang slides na nagpapakita po ng matrix kung paano po ginamit ang 2022 and 2023 OVP and DepEd confidential funds na na-release, in-encash at niliquidate ng Vice President at SDOs. Indicate other signatories to the DVs, checks, LRs and ARs and their relationship to the VP. Ang tumitestigo lang sa ating investigasyon ay sina former USEC Gloria Mercado at USEC Annalyn Sevilla mula sa DepEd, ang dating SDO ng DepEd na si Edward Fajarda ay napag-alaman naming lumipat na sa OVP. Hindi maiiwasang magtaka ang iba na bakit OVP at DepEd lang ang nakasalang sa usapin ng confidential funds. We have to start somewhere. At dahil nasimulan na natin ito, nakita natin na ang mga kaduda-dudang justification sa gastos para sa safe houses worth 16 million for 11 days at 15 million para sa youth leadership program kung saan pondo naman pala ng Philippine Army ang ginamit. Our inquiry does not end with 15 or 16 million or 73 million. Sa totoo lang, 612.5 million ang kabuuang halaga ng confidential fund ang ibinigay sa OVP and DepEd sa loob ng 2 taon. Dito po makikita po natin ang graph showing disbursement to OVP and DepEd totaling 612.5 million. Nasaan na ngayon ang 612.5 million? Sino ang gumastos nito at para saan ito ginastos? Dahil dinisalaw ng COA ang 73 million confidential funds ng OVP, ating siniyasat kung bakit ito nangyari, saan napunta at paano ito ginamit. Ngunit kung susumahin ang lahat ng confidential funds ng OVP at DepEd, ito ay abot sa higit kalahating bilyong piso o 612.5 million.
President, alam mo pa rin kung sino yung connected kay Vice President.
Yes, Your Honor.
Who are those people still connected with the Vice President?
Your Honor, as far as
you know it.
As far as I know, those people are still connected with the Vice President. Although as of today, I really do not have personal knowledge. But as far as I know, they are still connected with the OVP.
Mr. Chair, how about Ms. Lopez? Is she still connected?
As far as I know, Your Honor.
Mr. Gonzaga?
Gonzaga.
Yeah, Emmanuel Gonzaga Ortonio.
Yes, Your Honor. As far as I
How
know.
about Rosalyn Ladores Sanchez?
As far as I know, Your Honor.
Gina Acosta?
I don't have any interaction po with her, but when I was there, yes, I know that she was connected with the OVP.
About Julieta Villa del Rey?
As far as I know, Your Honor.
Edward Fajarda?
Yes, as far as I know.
And Sunshine Chari Fajarda?
As far as I know as well, Your Honor.
Mr. Chair, I would assume that if all of these are connected with the Vice President, it is the Vice President herself that asked them not to attend this hearing.
Another subpoena. With the stern warning that the next time that they fail to attend, we will be constrained to issue a much heavier penalty.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick manifestation. Unang-una ho ay pinapangalawahan ko po yung posisyon ni Congressman Abante patungkol po sa mga taong iniimbitahan ng committee ito upang magbigay ng impormasyon, pagpapaliwanag sa mga usapin na pinag-uusapan natin. Kung hindi po ako nagkakamali, Mr. Chairman, pang-apat na hearing na po natin ito. Tama po ba ako? This is our fourth hearing. I'm sure a great number of the Filipino people know what we're talking about. I'm sure the Office of the Vice President know what we're talking about. I'm sure the officials of the DepEd know what we're talking about. And being public servants, whether you're elected or you're appointed, it is part of your duty to make sure that you exercise transparency and accountability in the exercise of your duties and functions. Now, as an appointed official, having that oath that you have taken, pag meron pong mga patawag na ginagawa, ang Kongreso, maging ang Senado at ang mababang kapulungan, obligado pong umattend sila dahil napakahalaga po ng kanilang ibabahagi sa ating mga pinag-uusapan. So, alam ko naman po ay nakikinig yung mga iniimbitahan natin na ayaw sumipot. Pakiusap ko lang po sa kanila para naman matapos na po ito at makapagpatuloy na po tayo sa ilang bahagi. Ang habol lang naman po natin dito ay katotohanan, pagpapaliwanag lang kung paano ba ginastos yung pera. Hindi naman siguro masyadong mahirap ipaliwanag kung tama naman po ang paggastos ng pera. So, sinususugan ko po yung posisyon ni Congressman Paduano na pagbigyan natin muli ng, sige, isa pang pakiusap. Tulad na lang ng ginawa natin ng budget hearing, pinagbigyan na naman natin ng isa pang pagkakataon para humarap sa plenary. Kasi lang sana naman po, ito na ang huling pagkakataon na ibibigay natin. Dahil mahalaga po ang oras natin, mahalaga po yung oras ng mga taong pumupunta dito. Ako po ay nakikiisa sa pasasalamat sa inyong lahat. Dahil alam ko naman po ay inaabot po tayo minsan dito ng 8-10 oras sa pandinig. But you give time. You open up your schedule because you know the importance and the significance of these hearings.
Sapagkat tayo po ang binigyan ng mandato ng konstitusyon upang ating busisiin ang pondo na ginagamit ng bawat ahensya ng gobyerno, Mr. Chair. Kaya sa akin po, nakaka-disappoint sapagkat dapat ipaliwanag hindi lamang sa ating komite, dapat ipaliwanag sa taong bayan kung paano ba ginamit ang pondo ng taong bayan, Mr. Chair.
Congressman Luistro.
Mr. Chair, to complete the arguments, our answer to the arguments which were raised by the OVP in their position paper, I wish to share the rules and the jurisprudence which were cited with respect to the argument on sub judice rule. Isa po sa mga dahilan na ginagamit ng OVP why they refused to attend our inquiry in aid of legislation is the rule on sub judice. By this, we are prevented from making any comment or disclosures pertaining to judicial proceeding which may directly or indirectly impede, obstruct, or degrade the administration of justice. In Filipino, Mr. Chair, kapag ang subject matter is already pending in court, generally, we are precluded from making any comment. However, Mr. Chair, maliwanag po ang parameters when the sub judice rule may apply. And I wish to share, number 1, under Section 1 of the Rules on Inquiry in Aid of Legislation, the filing or pendency of a case before any court, tribunal, or quasi-judicial or administrative body shall not stop or abate any inquiry conducted to carry out a legislative process. Number 2, Mr. Chair, there is no pending court case or administrative appeal that involves the same subject matter of this hearing. I understand that there are pending petitions before the Supreme Court, but let us acknowledge that the subject matter of those petitions is the constitutionality of the grant of confidential fund to executive offices like the OVP and the DepEd. Whereas the subject matter of this investigation, Mr. Chair, is the utilization of the confidential fund. These are two different matters, Mr. Chair. And third, Mr. Chair, let us be aware of the jurisprudence on the case of Romero II versus Estrada. This is GR number 174105, promulgated on April 2, 2009, which essentially states ongoing judicial proceedings cannot preclude or hinder congressional hearings in aid of legislation. In this case, it was held that the mere filing of a criminal or an administrative complaint before a court should not automatically bar the conduct of legislative investigation. Otherwise, Mr. Chair, it would be extremely easy to subvert any intended inquiry by Congress through the convenient ploy of instituting a criminal or an administrative complaint. Surely, the exercise of sovereign legislative authority, of which the power of legislative inquiry is an essential component, cannot be made subordinate to a criminal or administrative investigation. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, there is no leg to stand on where the OVP can raise the rule on sub judice. I submit, Mr. Chair.
DM Joyce L. Eclavea, DepEd Branch, and Attorney Rafael Christopher L. Yap, Special Legal Concerns Department. Present, Your Honor. That's it.
Nakapag-take na po ba sila ng oath?
No, Your Honor, they are new invitees, Your Honor.
Yes. Pwede po bang paki-administer yung oath, Comsec?
From the representatives of the Land Bank, kindly stand up. Okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this inquiry? So help you God. Thank you, Your Honor. The oath has been administered.
Call on the first interpellator, the Honorable Congressman Rog Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I just have a few questions based on the ARs that we've done. And given that this is already our fourth hearing, I'm sure COA is very much used to our questioning, and I hope they could indulge us some more. Actually, Mr. Chair, yung aking mga katanungan is supposedly directed to the Special Disbursement Officer of the OVP, because under my understanding, based on the joint memo, this would have been SDO Acosta's responsibility, because under number 6.3.2, Section B, it is part of the Special Disbursing Officer's responsibility to maintain separate records of all transactions and to retain a certified copy or duplicate copy of the required supporting documents and reports on utilization. However, and my questioning is precisely on this, on the acknowledgement receipts attached as justification, yung documentary evidence presented. However, given that the SDO Acosta is not around, I guess we'll be forced to at least to get this, some of the answers, I'll be forced to ask the COA. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to direct my questions perhaps to Attorney Camora from the ICFAO, if they would be so kind to indulge. Just as to add context po, no, Attorney Camora. We know po that the confidential funds are special in the sense that they respond to, they pertain to a certain purpose only allowable under the joint memo circular. But this does not mean that this is a blank check po, no? It's not a blanket authority that it could be spent without justification. Would that be a fair statement po?
Attorney Camora, you're recognized.
That is correct po, Your Chair.
So,
Mr. Chair.
in line with that and in line with the requirements of the COA, you would ask actually for liquidation reports. Although it's special in the sense that it is directed only to the chairman of the COA, you still have the ICFAO to study this. And in fact, it is the ICFAO who gives the AOMs, the notice of disallowance, and the notice of credit in relation to confidential fund spending. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
That is correct, Mr.
Nice,
Chair.
So, Mr. Chair, given the, maybe no, I have a timeline again of the 2022 confidential fund usage of the OVP. If I understand correctly, it was disbursed within 11 days, This was for December of 2022, and the basis of the funds was a transfer from the contingent fund. But there was an AOM issued by your office. Anong date po nito?
Mr. Chair, the first AOM is dated September 14, 2023.
So for the 2022 confidential funds, September 2023 yung AOM. And the response by the Office of the Vice President was received around what time po kaya?
It was received by the ICFAO on October 19, 2023, Mr. Chair.
October 2023. And one of the findings there was insufficient the DEPs po, no? And this would be pertaining to in support of the liquidation reports, yung ating mga acknowledgement receipts. Because compared to usual spending by government wherein we actually need official receipts, kapag ang pinag-uusapan po ay confidential or intelligence funds, because precisely confidential dapat yung usage nito, it is sufficient to submit acknowledgement receipts. Tama po ba?
Mr. Chair, since the requirement is documentary evidence of payment, not necessarily official receipt.
Correct.
So they could submit acknowledgement
Attorney Camora,
receipts.
pwede pong pakilakasan po ninyo yung boses ninyo.
Documentary evidence of payment po ang required sa joint circular. So the acknowledgement receipts are acceptable po.
Acceptable. Correct po, no? And I agree with that. So the acknowledgement receipts are acceptable. However, one of the findings of the AOM was kulang nga po yung DEPs. And this is pertaining to the acknowledgement receipts.
The first time na nag-liquidate po sila, wala po talagang submitted na DEPs.
Opo. So that's why you had the AOMs in September 2023. Part of the findings was the lack of the DEPs, precisely yung mga ARs natin. And then they answered in October 2023. When they filed in October 2023, was it already there, yung DEPs? Yung justification po nila?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it was part of their compliance.
So it was submitted October 2023. After that, there was a notice of disallowance pertaining to that quarter. Kailan po ito na issue?
Mr. Chair, before that, a notice of suspension was issued. So normally, after the AOM is issued and the COA is not satisfied with the compliance, we issue a notice of suspension, which was issued on December 13, 2023.
December 2023. And the notice of suspension you mentioned is when the COA is not satisfied. So yung pagsubmit po ng October 2023 DEPs, hindi pa po satisfied yung COA. And what was the reason that you were not satisfied? Mali-mali po ba yung mga AR or kulang pa po yung mga AR?
May mga ibang ARs po na may issues and may kulang pa po na additional documentation on other ARs.
And after the notice of suspension for December 2023, they were given another chance to submit additional documents. Is that correct? Or wala na po?
Meron pa, Mr. Chair.
Meron pa.
They were given 90 days.
90 days.
To,
When did they, apologies, when did they submit their additional DEPs po? In response to the notice of suspension?
Mr. Chair, we received their compliance on March 13, 2024.
March 2024. And finally, I suppose after this, ito na po yung disallowance?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Anong date po ng disallowance po natin?
The disallowance is dated August 8, 2024, Mr. Chair.
August 2024. Thank you. I'll get back to that po. No? I wanted to establish a timeline because one of the things that we have found with the acknowledgement receipts is that there seemed to be a disconnect in relation to the dates, especially considering the fourth quarter of 2022 CF. Mr. Chair, maybe ask the Secretariat. I don't know if they've prepared it. I want to flash on screen an acknowledgement receipt. Here. Is the date legible po sa inyo? Can you see? I'd like to confirm that the date that it says is actually December 28, 2023. Do you see that, Attorney Camora?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And supposedly this was attached. I'm not sure if this would come in for the first batch of response in December 2023 or if it came in with the second batch of response no March 2024. But this is supposedly a DEP presented for the fourth quarter of 2022. Isn't it strange, not really strange, it's outright false for it to justify an expense in 2022, but the date is 2023. Would that be correct, Ms. Camora? Attorney Camora?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. Actually, one of the findings under the notice of suspension is that some of the acknowledgement receipts were dated December 2023, and some were even undated.
Yes. And this would be the basis for disallowance? Or was this, this was the findings of the AOM po, no?
Yes, that is under the notice of suspension na po, Mr.
suspension.
Chair. Since nakapag-comply na sila, so yung observation namin was already under the notice of suspension po.
How would it be complied po, Attorney Camora? How did they rectify the AR? If it, I mean, my understanding po is pag submitted po yung AR, this is already supposedly presumed to be regular, and then you have an outright problem such as 2023. Although you might say na typographical error, but correct me if I'm wrong, this happens more than once po. Is that correct, Attorney Camora?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Would you know how many ARs exactly yung dated 2023 submitted for 2022?
Mr. Chair, we have attached it in the original notice of suspension. However, we do not have the figures today.
Sige po. Well, just to help you po, no, based on our study, 158 of the acknowledgement receipts have that typographical error. We would understand the typographical error if it happens once or twice, and at most for one individual to make that mistake multiple times. But for supposedly acknowledgement receipts which come from different sources, this should be different people issuing it po, diba? These are different people signing off for different expenses. Now, for 158 people to make the same mistake, is that something that would be acceptable? Is that an acceptable margin of error for the COA?
Mr. Chair, they answered in their compliance. As to the
Mr. Chair, apologies. Maybe what does it mean to answer with the compliance? So they took back yung AR na mali po yung date, or?
no, Mr. Chair, yung compliance nila contained their answers why they had acknowledgement receipts dated December 2023 and undated acknowledgement receipts.
And what was the answer po, Attorney Camora?
They said they have inadvertently contained clerical or typographical errors indicating 2023 instead of 2022. Considering the nature of confidential activities which are usually conducted discreetly and completed within a short period of time, and in addition to the lack of attention to details of personnel attending to voluminous papers from several individuals, some data in the acknowledgement receipts submitted as proof of transactions may have been missed.
Mr. Chair, apologies. I think that portion would suffice po, Attorney Camora. No? So the answer of compliance, they did not dispute, they did not take back the ARs, but they simply gave that defense that it was an inadvertence, or basically typo nga po siya. But precisely the point, Mr. Chair, that I think that the committee should consider is that it's a typographical error for 158 acknowledgement receipts. This is not something that I think, although we do not argue with the COA, of course, this is their jurisdiction. It is precisely their decision if that compliance would be sufficient. However, I think for us to consider in strengthening the laws that we are going to craft, in support perhaps of the joint memorandum circular, I think we have to be stricter with the acknowledged receipts to be issued. Because, Mr. Chair, I would like to propose one thing. Of course, the COA will not be able to answer this. But given the timeline po, no, September 2023 yung first na AOM, the October 2023 was the compliance with the first batch of ARs, and then December 2023, the notice of suspension. And that was the time siguro po, no, that they were coming up with these new ARs. it would make more sense, Mr. Chair, for them to make that mistake. Because when you, pag nagkaka-typographical error po natin sa date, the usual mistake is you put on the date that is current. Isn't it possible, Mr. Chair, based on human experience, isn't it more likely that these ARs were prepared a year after the fact already? That they were prepared in December 2023, because this precisely coincides with the date in which they submitted the second batch of the ARs. I don't think, Mr. Chair, this was a mistake that was committed in December 2022. This was a mistake that was committed after the fact, after the AOM, and after the notice of suspension, when they were rushing to comply with yung mga butas po na lahat ng COA. I think this is something that the committee should consider, especially when it comes to the compliance with the COA. We are not faulting the COA, of course, and we respect them. This is their jurisdiction. But one thing that we understand, that we see from the COA, is that generally they are not really ministerial, but they would err on the side of caution rather than put themselves in the place to, exercise discretion regarding the disbursements by any agency. Sa kanila po, as long as complied yung DEP, and as long as there's an explanation, they would accept it. However, I think the COA has to go above and beyond that requirement. Because, Mr. Chair, just to highlight also how spurious this seems and how bogus. If December 2022 po yung date dapat ng AR, tapos December 2023 yung date, it wouldn't even correspond to any confidential funds. It's not possible, if ever the reasoning was nagkapalitan ng AR, because I understand that might be one of the excuses for inadvertence. Baka nagkapalitan yung AR for December 23 and December 2022. Pero wala pong December 2023. If we recall, the fourth quarter of the confidential funds for the Office of the OVP was never dispersed. They chose, although it was already included in the our General Appropriations Act, they chose not to disperse yung fourth quarter. So saan po na ilalagay itong December 2023 AR if, in fact, they would say inadvertence, nagkapalitan yan, or if they say typographical error naman, it wouldn't make sense. What's that doing in December 2022? 158 times po nangyari.